I do have one here that I think would be really fun. It is Brian in California. Let's go ahead and talk to Brian. Brian, you're live with Eric and Drew.
Hey, thank you. I'm a fan of Drew. Eric, I think I might have watched one of your videos before, though I don't quite remember. I saw Drew's post about it, and I was like, oh, I'd like to call in. I haven't done that since I was 17.
Yay! That's awesome. And no worries, Brian. I'm just some asshole on the internet, so you're good. So it says in the description for your call, you want to talk about neo-atheism and post-new atheists and branding. Talk to us. What's going on?
Yeah, well, so it doesn't like have to be called neo-atheism. It can be called second wave atheism. But I feel like I've noticed that like there are a lot of atheists nowadays that want to disassociate from that kind of new atheist form that came about post 9/11.
Yeah.
Guys like like Drew, who are more like about understanding religion and the benefits of it, and and also getting away from like anti-theism. And so, like I said, I feel like we should try to find some kind of label to like so that people start knowing like, okay, we're not like the new atheists. We're like something else, something different. And I just said neo-atheist because I've also noticed a trend online that like, if you can't say new, the next thing to say is neo. But I'm not trying to invent language here. I'm just saying I think we need some kind of new label.
Totally understood.
Does that make sense? Or am I crazy?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I feel that. I get that. And man, so something that I have realized with my career in doing this, I didn't first of all expect to get the viewership that I have now, or even that I had by the end of 2018. 100,000 subscribers was my biggest goal in my entire life when I started doing this. And I went full time and reached that in like 5 months. And so I've just been like riding the wave, trying to do my best, like realizing that I'm getting a lot more I have more influence than I ever really prepared myself to have. And so because of that, I try to make it really slow going. I've been doing this a while. I know how to get more views. I know how to get more subscribers. I know how to grow aggressively. I know how to form community around me. I know how to get the audience to defend me no matter what I say. That's something that you learn as you become like an influencer and community leader and whatever else you want to call it. And a lot of that time, that power is not actually good to exercise. There are people that get involved in controversy and they have such a relationship with their fans that their fans defend them when they've done things that they need to apologize for or need to just get off the internet after they did. And so for me, I say all that to say that I've realized that my channel is big enough to start a new label, to come up with a new term for this. I talk about calling myself a pluralist. I talk against the label anti-theist in my content, like you said, but I have really shied away from coming up with a new label because I, in the end, don't want this community to revolve around me. I don't want it to revolve around my content and my channel. I want to be one voice, and people can point to that and be like, that I resonated with that for this and this reason. I do not want people to point to me and go, that's the guy that we need to follow, because inevitably I'm going to lead you astray somewhere. Like that's just how it works. I'm not going to be able to be this great grand leader. And the vast majority of people who fancy themselves an incredible new thought leader are actually people with quite low empathy who enjoy power and are also charismatic. They're not people who actually need to be in leadership. So I would say, I'm assuming you're a guy, you're a regular guy. You have about as much influence as anybody else who's in like a forum. You are the kind of person where labels need to come from. You are the kind of person that need to start conversations about the language we need to be using. if it comes from me, that label is going to be about me, and it doesn't need to be about me. It needs to be about what you just said. So having these conversations with other people and coming to consensus based on that, based on a lot of debate, like the New Testament canon formed, that's the best way to do it, I think.
And then, well, Brian, do you want to get the chance to respond before I hop in?
Yeah, no, I guess what you're saying, it does make sense. I will say that as someone who studied communications for PR and advertising, it's like what you're telling me is also like really like, I get from your standpoint, Drew, and I think that is very responsible of you. But it's like, it's so much harder for like people like myself to have that influence and stuff like that. But I think what you're saying is very well thought out.
And Brian, are you aware that it has been tried and had really, really disastrous failures in the past?
I
generally tend to think if I come up with an idea, it's probably already been come up with somebody smarter.
No. Trust me, not smarter. So just for fun looking up, the first thing that I would say is Daniel Dennett wanted to rebrand atheism, and he called it the Bright Movement. And so if you are a non-believer and you've kind of come to this place of not just, the God question, but I've moved into kind of a liberal view of things, you are a Bright. How cringy is that? It was bad. Because what's the alternative? If you're not a Bright, you're dim.
Yeah.
Right. It's just horribly cringy and got really, really did not do well. And then later on, I think it was like the early 2010s, I heard about Atheism Plus.
Yeah.
Like a subscription model. I mean, the Atheism Plus movement. And the fact is that from what I've seen historically, when it comes to non-believing communities, we organize ourselves into communities because we're humans. But it's like wrangling cats.
Yeah.
You just are herding cats. It's so difficult to find and label that kind of thing because you have a whole bunch of people who fought really, really hard to get out from under a label in the first place. That there are a lot of people who will find it kind of morally superior to get out from under that label just so that they could say that they did.
Yeah.
But if you go ahead.
I was going to say, I would say the problem with Bright and what was the other one? Atheism Plus that you said is, and this is once again just kind of coming from my background and my studies, that just sounds like it's terrible because it's not actually using things that are familiar to people, or in the case of Atheism Plus, it's using a context that people are just like, they already associate it with something else, like you said, like a subscription model. So that's why I called it neo-atheism. I was trying to think like, what do people already know? How are people already speaking?
Yeah.
And how do I combine words that people are already using in a way that like they're going to hear them together and it's going to make sense?
I would say neo would be a bad prefix there because like neoconservative and neoliberal tend to be ascribed pejoratively to them as a way to describe them as a radical. But if you want to see some cool conversations, instead of looking for the word atheist, look for deconstruction. There are some incredible communities that are being built online around deconstruction that are both believers and non-believers, people who are really, really intent on getting into the nuts and bolts of what they believe and why, and breaking down those pieces and finding out whether or not those pieces are worth believing. And I've seen that it is less vitriolic and more interesting to see those conversations being had. So maybe looking there would help.
Yeah. I'd say for me, the problem with, I get what you're saying too. I don't know. For me, the thing with deconstruction is that it feels like something, like obviously I'm aware I can deconstruct my own beliefs and my own background, but I don't come from a religious background. So I hear deconstruction so often associated with Christianity. It doesn't feel like there's a place for me because I was never a Christian.
Hey, I mean, I definitely feel that. It does kind of, it is that in a lot of ways. That said, you will find people that I think that you would get along with. I mean, if you're the type who would want to have a conversation with Eric and I, you're probably the type who would want to have a conversation with someone in a deconstruction space. But it's, I don't know. What do you think, Eric? Is there room for people who were never religious in the deconstruction sphere? Do they have something useful to contribute, and can they identify under that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. From an epistemic point of view, I mean, the tools that you're using to deconstruct your religious beliefs are tools that should be in your toolbox. And if you've never had that religious belief, you should still have those tools, because it's going to help you break down everything else in that world around you. So I feel like if you wanted to get involved in that space, you can really develop those tools, that epistemic groundwork to take elsewhere. So even if you're not there, and plus, I mean, not just in atheism spaces, not just in deconstructive spaces, but just, you're going to find people in both who just want to have wonderful navel-gazy conversations, around morality and ethics and how did we get to where we are and where should we go? So yeah, no, I highly encourage you to get involved in those communities simply to develop the skill set. Yeah.
I'll try looking more into that. I have tried, although I've always kind of failed. I don't seem to know why. Maybe it's because I'm using Reddit as a medium, but I've tried inviting people onto a small podcast that I have, and always seem to fail. I don't know if it's my approach. Last time I tried approaching it, I wanted to talk to a young Earth creationist, and everyone just seemed offended, even though I thought I was being polite by saying I've got an anthropological interest in young Earth creationism and want to talk to one.
So this is where I think you get a lot of people who want to replicate the things that they see on TV. There are a lot of atheists who watch call-in shows like this that are really, really aggressive and really, really shouty and really vitriolic. And they go, oh man, that'd be fun. And so when they get the opportunity, they want to replicate that. And so finding those, it can be really tough having those conversations because of what happened there. Don't give up. I think that over time, if you keep doing your podcast, you're going to create a community that's going to be the kind of community that you want. But it is going to take that time and work for sure.
All right. I'll keep at that.
Yeah. And keep doing it. You seem like a sweet guy. I think you should absolutely create that content, build that place and form that community. Just keep doing it. Don't be discouraged. Keep going for it. Okay.
All right. Thanks. My co-host and I, he's a Catholic. We certainly do try to have more just casual conversations about these weird topics like aliens and supernaturalism.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
You ever talk about cohabitation?
we had another podcast where we talked about, we were so much more off the wall. We talked about stuff like that. Yeah.
Right on. I hope to hear in the future that you're continuing to do it. That's awesome.
All right.
Hey, Brian, thank you for calling in.
Thanks.
That was a GM Skeptic viewer. I'm glad that was somebody who called in. Have you talked to them before?
No, I don't believe so. It is interesting to hear someone talking who has a PR and marketing background, because they almost definitely see what I do in a way that's a lot in a way that most viewers don't, I guess I should say. A lot of people don't, they're very blind to marketing. And that's very scary because marketing is, it's easy to pull one over on people. And so, yeah, talking to a person who's aware of that kind of thing, and I can say, yeah, I don't want to actually do marketing in this way. And they're like, oh yeah, I understand that. I understand why. That's nice and refreshing. So I appreciated that.
Yeah, me too. I having moved into the corporate world for a while, and seeing marketing from the corporate side, it has blown my mind. I've done it now for about 2 years, and I just resigned from my position in marketing because I can't. It's so different from what we do, Drew.
Yeah.
It's so different.